Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled. We have a super fun and kind of out of the box episode for you all today. You may have remembered that we were originally going to talk a little bit more about some things coming out of Madam Web, and then Madam Web happened and didn't give us anything to talk about other than some really tragic CGI and some bad mouth matching sounds. So we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about something that's infinitely more interesting going on in the MCU, which is that Bob Iger recently came out. If you don't know, Bob Iger is the CEO of Disney, the parent company of Marvel Studios, came out and said that when it comes to Marvel, we're really going to focus on making sequels. So we are going to talk about our wishful sequels today. Katie and I each brought two to the table that are characters or properties that we really want to see get their next movie and continue the story. Without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Katie to give us our first property.
Yeah, I just want to really quick say before we get into our picks is this is very interesting news, I'm sure, to many of you. At the end of the day, I think a lot of people have been complaining about Phase 4 because of the new characters, which is kind of ironic because Phase 1 was also all new characters. But, I think a lot of people are getting what they want. They wanted more of they wanted more of the new characters, I should say, but not more new characters, if that makes sense.
Continued stories.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's the one. And so I do think a lot of people are happy with this. I was a little shocked at the announcement, but I'm also excited. There are quite a few that I think deserve more. So to go right into my first pick, I'm not sure this is going to be surprising to almost anybody because I adored this movie and didn't expect to. And that's Eternals. I would love a second Eternals. I'm not sure it's officially slated, but it's definitely been one of those that you're like, it's going to happen and it's been talked about enough. And I believe it's Chloe Zhao, I want to say, is the director. I want to say that's how you pronounce everything there and that I'm saying the correct person. But she said she would love to do another one. She would greatly come back and continue the story. It was a contested film. Not a lot of people liked it. I don't know why. It's funny because I think a lot of people want Marvel to do things differently, and they did. And they didn't like it, and I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was so good, and I think it set some really cool things up that I would like to see play out finally.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. The only reason Eternals is not one of my two is because I wanted to pick one that was separate from Caitlin. So I definitely too feel like this is a great film, or it was a great film, and it's a great property that I think we need to explore more. I mean, the cast was amazing. You got Angelina Jolie out there slicing it up.
Love her. Mother.
Literally. The girl who played Makari, who I cannot remember her name right now, but she was, oh my God, she was incredible. I wanted to cry. Oh, she was so good.
And now let's just say, mainly because I need this on a recording and not just in a bunch of Instagram comments that I've been leaving since Saltburn came out, but I have been on the Barry Keoghan train, not even since Eternals, since Dunkirk, okay? But listen, let's just say, we love our boy Druig over here. Like, adore our boy Druig. And so I'm ready. And now that he's having such a huge moment in the spotlight too, I'm like, bring them all back already. I want them. I mean, in flashbacks, give me Selma Hayek. Like, I don't care. I want them all back. I want the story to be told. I mean, Cersei's been abducted by a celestial. Like, we need to address some of these big things. We have Harry Styles showing up.
I was waiting for it.
Oh, he was coming. Don't worry. But I need to know what happens next, and nothing has touched it. I mean, we've barely even gotten reference to, the whole celestial that's sticking out of the earth. So let's go. Give me a second one. There's so many cool things I think we can explore with it. I mean, I honestly am about to go just rewatch Eternals now that I'm talking about it because it's been a while and I would love to go enjoy it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting the way that they've both been integrated and not integrated into the MCU. You have what's his face with his hand sticking out of the earth currently.
Is he Arishem or is he the other one?
Arishem is the big guy who stole Cersei.
I do this every time.
You do
I
this.
do this every time.
I can't think of his name, the guy whose hand is sticking out, but I'm pretty sure Arishem is the one who took her.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of the one that's sticking out.
Yeah, but anyway, that is supposed to be a major plot point in the Thunderbolts, I think.
Mhm.
was the rumor. So hopefully we're getting some sort of, at least acknowledgement there. We obviously got that tiny little thing in She-Hulk. And then, of course, we actually had the Celestial in Thor Love and Thunder. So we have had small references to these beings, but nothing about this group of beings that stopped him from actually destroying the entire Earth, who are great actors and actresses, great characters, who I want to see again.
Listen, I agree 100%. I liked that it took me away from some of the typical Marvel related stuff. It was a superhero movie that didn't feel overly superhero-y because they didn't label themselves as such. And I liked that. I just thought they were an interesting group. I wanted more. It was a shame because obviously the premise of the movie was that they were meant to be dying pretty much throughout it. So we did lose, I think, 3 or 4 of them, maybe even more, and I'm losing track.
At least three.
At least 3, yeah. And so I'm sitting here and I not only would I have wished to have seen all 10 of them together full time, but the ones that are left are so interesting. And I just want to see their stories play out. And also, like I said, Harry Styles as Eros, Thanos' brother, just showed on up at the end of those. And I would love to know where we're going with it because no other property is going to explore that. And I know that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird to me that we've spent so much time in space recently. The Marvels obviously comes to mind immediately, but even Love and Thunder.
Well, and Guardians.
Yeah, like these very space centered movies. And I'm not saying you need to have the Eternals in there, but like Guardians was the first place that ever introduced us to a celestial. Never mentioned it again after the second one. I mean, like, well, again, let me rephrase. Never mentioned it in the third one after the Eternals, which is the only one that came after we were properly told what a celestial was. What? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and now correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be. It's been a little while since I've seen this movie. But isn't Thena and Druig and Makari, aren't they on the ship? Like when Eros showed up, they were on the ship out in space already. So there is this big ship just kind of floating around in space and nobody's like paying attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a thought. Just a thought to go out there.
Well, and then you have Kit Harington's character, whose name escapes me. I want to say Black Bolt, but I know that's not right because
Black Knight.
Yes, Black
He's
Knight.
a knight.
Yeah, that sounds
He's
right.
some sort of knight.
Yeah, because he has the sword is his thing. And then wasn't it Mahershala Ali's Blade
Yes.
who got the VO at the end? So
Yes.
like, hello. So then maybe you have to wonder like, is our next kind of tie to any of these characters Blade? If they're going to cross those two together?
Well, I will say there's also been a lot coming out. I mean, Twitter has been on fire lately with just a lot of big rumors and a lot of very reputable sources talking about things that they're hearing. And one of them is about a Midnight Suns lineup.
I heard that, and I am so infinitely excited.
Yes. So I do wonder if a part of that plays in here with his character. But I will also say, like, part of that and his drive to do what he does in the end credit is because Cersei is taken.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I need a second Eternals to bridge that gap anyway.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, there's so much room for story with these characters for them to interact with other characters or keep them separate. I don't really care at this point. I just want more of these characters. They're fascinating. They're so dynamic. They have a perspective on the universe that none of our other characters have, save for maybe Thor, because no, not even Thor, because they talk about playing with Thor as a child. Okay, well, then they're older than Thor significantly.
Yeah.
So nobody has the perspective on the universe that they do. They're a wealth of knowledge that we're not tapping into, and it is infuriating.
I totally agree. And like I said, just in general, Chloe does an amazing job of just telling the story. And listen, if people didn't like it, that's honestly a shame because she took it's in an MCU or it's in the MCU bigger universe. And yeah, it's a superhero movie, but I think if it hadn't been tagged with that could have been an award-winning movie, if I'm being completely honest.
I mean, and then if you look visually, first of all, visually it was stunning. Their outfits were amazing.
Oh,
not that that's like the most important thing, but also like, yes, it is. That's a whole category at the Oscars. So I will say what I want to say about their outfits, which were wonderful, and I was like in love with them. Third of all, the effects were so solid. I mean, watching Mercari run, and then you look at, sorry, DC, but then you look at the Flash, and it just does not hold water. And it's like, this is how you do speed. And I don't know if anybody else has seen the behind the scenes of how they got that shot, but it's awesome and it's so cool and it looks so good. So, like, what is your problem with this film?
I totally agree. Listen, you're preaching to the choir here.
I'm well aware. I know how much you like this film. And like I said, the only reason it wasn't in my top 2 is because I didn't want to duplicate your top 2. And that takes me right into one that you just took off your list because you knew it was on mine, because we are on the same wavelength here, which is Shang-Chi. I want to see my guy again. I can't tell anybody how much I love Simu Liu. Like, I adore that man. I have read his autobiography. He was a king as Ken. He hosted the People's Choice Awards. Like, I don't know how you can be a person on this planet and not think Simu Liu is a treasure. Or, if you do think he's a treasure, because that should be a given, why are we not putting him in every single thing ever? Not only is he a great actor, but the character is awesome. He has really cool powers. The movie was great, and he has a great supporting cast, and there's just so much room there for him to do cool stuff. So, another one. It boggles the mind that we are now 2.5 years out from his movie. 2.5? 2.5.
Yeah. Yeah, because September will be 3, 2021.
Gross. Okay. 2.5 years out from his movie, and we have nary a word of a sequel. We know it's coming, it's confirmed, but we have no idea what it's about, really when it's coming, or if we're going to see him between now and then, which in a shared universe is a possibility, but tell me. Or if you're not going to tell me, make it important and make it happen. Like, the way that you feel about Eternals, that's how I feel about Shang-Chi. And I just really want him back.
No, I do. I genuinely share those feelings, though, with Shang-Chi, because it was visually amazing. We all know I have a very big sweet spot for anything that deals with martial arts or anything in that realm. So that was also super cool to see that come in and be such a prominent part to his story. And I just think it's a disservice to not allow us to return to not just the character, but the realms in which he belongs, especially because, and I wonder if this is why they've put it off, we don't really have a lot of explanation as to the realms he comes from and how they tie into, I mean, I guess the earth as a whole, but also the universe. And then we also have the multiverse currently at play. So I almost wonder if that partially put down the idea of the sequel, just because they don't know how to fully explain that in everything else we have going on. Regardless, I think it was such a beautifully done movie from start to finish. It was so cool. You have some awesome end credits that, one, I think we reference a lot, but the other one is that his sister is out here possibly following in her father's footsteps. I think there's so much potential for his character, and I see he's in a lot of lineups for Avengers. I see that. A lot of the times when people are doing the next team up and the rumors are flying, he is on that list, and as he should be, but he deserves a sequel before we get an Avengers movie.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, he's such a great character, but I think before I need to see him on an Avengers lineup, I need to see him progress a little more, and that's not a knock on him. I love the character, and I love Simu in the role. But also, it's kind of an excuse for me to say, make the second movie, you losers. Like, what are you doing? He's a great character. The film, I think, did pretty well. Honestly, let's just say this. Fall/winter 2021 has been peak Marvel in terms of the post-Endgame era.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best we've gotten. I mean, from Eternals, Shang-Chi, we got What If in that period, if you're counting late summer, we got Hawkeye and we got No Way Home.
Shang-Chi
was September.
Oh, no, that was September.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I guess I didn't realize how quickly all those movies came out on top of each other.
Yeah, 2021 as a very brand new podcast was a little insane.
Well, and I remember, but I guess to be fair, I had just gone back to school for my senior year. So it also, while I know I saw these movies, because I obviously went, and I remember, like, I saw Shang-Chi with my roommates, and I know I saw Eternals alone, and I know I saw No Way Home with my roommates, and then I came home and Taylor and I went and saw it again. And I know we did all of that, but it's very hard for me to realize that actually happened.
Yeah, in such a short span of time.
Yeah,
Especially
exactly.
considering, like, we had the beginning of the year, that was the year that we got WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki season 1. Then we kind of had a break where we, because Black Widow
Was
came
it
out.
really? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
2021. Because then Black Widow came out during Loki season 1. Then we had a tiny break.
That's
then it was What If season 1, right into Shang-Chi, a little bit of time off, into Hawkeye, into No Way Home. Oh, sorry, no.
They overlapped.
Shang-Chi, Eternals, then into Hawkeye, which overlapped with No Way Home. We had like 5 shows and 4 movies.
Well, and then Moon Knight came out not far after. We had some other movie that I don't remember, and then we had MOM.
It was Morbius. That's why you don't remember.
That checks. With how Madam Web is going, yeah, that all makes sense.
We don't count those unless we have to.
Yeah, I was like, I definitely remember seeing another one.
Yeah, that was like March.
Venom. Venom came out somewhere in there too. In fall of 2021, Venom 2.
Yeah, it did. It was a very busy year because remember, we were coming off all that stuff that had backed up during the pandemic.
Wow.
All came out in 2021.
Wow. But yeah, regardless of all of that, I totally agree. Shang-Chi needs to come back. And you were kind of saying with the character and everything, I think the first movie was beautifully done because we need to explain his story. We had to understand his relationship with his father, and we had to understand the rings. And so I think that all tied in very nicely, especially coming off of Iron Man 3, where we did have reference. We kind of saw this, but not really. But I think to get an Avengers film with him in it suddenly would feel very jarring. I need to know what my guy's been up to since his whole expedition over, and he technically took down his father, and now he has the rings, and he also had a weird meeting with Carol and Wong and the Hulk and whatever. I need to know what he's doing on his day-to-day. Like, is he back to valeting, or is he a hero saving the day in the same city Scott Lang's hanging out in? Like, I need to understand what he's up to and what his story looks like now before I see him in an Avengers film.
Well, and then we haven't even touched on quite possibly the biggest opportunity when it comes to him, which is whatever his rings mean and whatever sister bangles they may or may not be related to, which is honestly why we've brought up his character so many times in the last 1.5 to 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much out there, whether or not we get the Kang storyline aside, because I know we've talked about how those kind of have a similar vibe and look and things like that. Kamala's bangles, now that we know what those are, being quantum bands, that makes the potential that they are of a similar build not necessarily more likely, because I can't say that, but if they are, it makes it that much more interesting, and it means it's that much more important that we not only get Shang-Chi, but we get his 10 rings, because those might be some of the most important pieces of jewelry in the entire universe. And you cannot put some of the most important pieces of jewelry in the entire universe on the sideline for 3 years and say, by the way, welcome back. I know that's what they're doing, but it's very aggravating.
We are totally aligned. Don't even worry. But I'm going to pivot us now to my second choice. And I'm going to be honest, I keep kind of going back and forth between them because I'm not really sure. There's 2, and I'm not sure which one I want to say. My heart tells me one, my brain tells me the other. I'm going to go with my heart. And that is a third Doctor Strange, which we know is coming. We know it's going to happen, just like Shang-Chi. It's been one of those that were like, and even Eternals. We all know there's going to be a second one, but it's kind of more of the question of when. And I actually think this one has been talked about. Doctor Strange 3 has actually been talked about a lot on this podcast because of how MOM ended. Additionally, because of MOM being kind of crappy in general, beyond Wanda, beyond my queen, but everything else being kind of crappy about the movie.
It really ended our streak of great stuff.
It did. It really did. Oh, it did. I just remember leaving I honestly remember leaving the theater, and my roommates were like, that was so good. And I was like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. And then I literally sat there and for an hour explained all the reasons it was bad. And they were like, well, when you put it like that, like, yeah, it's not that good. And I was like, exactly. That's all we needed to say.
I'm pretty sure you and I texted each other and we're like, I really wanted to like that movie, but I didn't.
Oh,
How did you feel? Because we both went in, and you all know, you heard the predictions episode, you heard the hype, the level of excitement. And look, maybe that was on us with the expectations, like everybody else. Like, we got wrapped up in it. it. But then we texted each other and I was like, it didn't do it for me. And she was like, no, same.
No, but listen, and I've said this on this podcast so many times that at the end of the day, you can't call a movie Multiverse of Madness and really only sadly visit like 2 other universes. It just I don't know. I think that's where the problem starts and then it just kind of snowballs. But I think beyond everything, the second one being kind of cruddy makes me want the third one even more. Beyond Clea, beyond knowing that we're going to Secret Wars, which is all other reasons, of course, I want a third one. I want them to fix this because the first Doctor Strange, while I remember not liking it initially because it was such a different direction, ever since I've seen it past that first time, I have loved it. It is visually so amazing. And I will say, I don't think MOM was visually bad. I just think it was bad. But the first Doctor Strange, I think just in general, the writing and the introduction to his character is so well done versus I think the second one, and I don't mean this in a bad way because we all know I love Wanda, but it got too wrapped up in making her a villain, even though it didn't make sense, that they almost forgot they had to tell the whole rest of the story and it just all crumbled. I think if we can put the focus back on Doctor Strange and what he's up to, I think a third one's going to be amazing. And I think same with Shang-Chi, but for very different reasons. We have to get a third one before we enter Secret Wars, as far as I'm concerned, or a third one is going to make literally no sense.
Yeah, there are so many things to come off of what you just said. First, I think one of the other things you talked about not liking the first Doctor Strange originally, but then that made me remember when we did our replay episode. But I remember both of us being like, wow, we really like this. But then looking at it and knowing where his character goes, it is very much like a little whiplash because he starts off as this major turd and he's really full of himself and he's a total butthole. But then by the end, you see him kind of coming around. He's much more likable. Then you see him in Infinity War, in Endgame, even in No Way Home.
Ragnarok.
He's much more likable, much more responsible, and you can see that growth and that character development. And then I felt like so much of what happened to him and what the choices that he makes in MOM kind of fly against all of the development he did. And I get that they needed to like set up the idea of Doctor Strange in every universe being a menace to the multiverse,
essentially to society.
Truly. But then also, like, if you think about what they did in the recent season of What If, it's like, okay, I guess in every universe he is just gonna be the bad guy, and maybe that's why they're leading us this way to lead us towards Secret Wars, where he does become Doom's right hand man. Like, maybe in some ways Derrickson's vision for the evolution of this character was not in line with the ultimate evolution of the character, which is to see him make the ultimate wrong decision when it comes to Secret Wars. And so, like, that part I get, but I just want to point that out. The other thing I wanted to say is, yes, you need another movie before you get to Secret Wars. I don't think that this version, personally, is ready to go be Doom's right-hand man. He's never even met the guy. Why would he give up his principles or any of his sense of right or wrong, which, yes, is warped. We get it. We've seen him make a few bad mistakes, but this is a really big one. And this is a really big choice to make for a guy that we've never seen him even cross paths with, as far as we know.
My answer that I'm going to have here hits both parts of what you just said, and it actually refers to something I've said before. Doctor Strange as a character, you actually kind of already said this, but going from the first movie to the second movie for him is jarring.
It is.
I get it. I understand that this is not always going to perfectly align. But Doctor Strange is one of the few characters who is so sucked into other movies, and we listed them. There's at least 4 other appearances he makes between his 2 movies, which are also, as a reminder, 7, 8 years apart?
6.
I can't math. But regardless, 6 years is still a lot between a first movie. Yeah. And then to have made 4 other appearances in the meantime, 3 of them consecutive pretty much.
And 3 of them are large, significant appearances. Ragnarok is the only one that can be considered a cameo. The other 3, he moves the plot along.
Exactly. So because he is one of the few characters that I think falls to that formatting, it does make it very difficult to create sequels to him. And I hate it because if I were to take out, the 3 Captain Americas or the Chris Evans because we're about to have a fourth one, which is technically a first one. But if I were to take out the Chris Evans trilogy, for the most part, I could watch those back to back and I would at least pretty much be able to follow the story and it doesn't feel jarring. He's the same character. If anything, well, Natasha's not in the first one, but if anything, Natasha from the second to the third is more jarring than anything. And that's fine. The Iron Mans, I could do the same. Even the Thors, and they have literally gone from super dark and just kind of crappy to super fun and then just like way too fun. And now we're also crappy. And they're about to have a fifth one. Yet I can still follow those for the most part. And he is also one that has been involved in other projects. Doctor Strange is just being sucked in the wrong way. And his character is not being able to make sense in his own story anymore. And because of that, I want a third one because I want a redemption arc in the sense of I want a movie redemption arc because I need to see Strange devolve essentially into the version he needs to be for Secret Wars.
Yeah. And I think, the ending of 2 with that third eye and the appearance of Clea, I think that really sets it up.
For sure.
And that's why I think, to your point, there's no way we're not getting the third one before we go to Secret Wars. Why they haven't just gone and announced it and put it on the slate, I'll never understand. But hey, catch us in July after Comic-Con and maybe we'll have a date. I'm not sure. But I definitely think it has to happen.
Listen, Marvel has been out here, or at least the rumor mill has been out here by reputable, again, very reputable sources with a lot of movies that they're claiming that are going to be coming out prior to Secret Wars. And last I checked, Secret Wars is what, 2026, 2027?
Yeah. I mean, I forgot Blade was happening because it's gotten pushed, but apparently Blade, like so many times, apparently Blade is coming out next year.
Oh, yes, that got pushed. But, we've been talking in this whole time. There's a movie called Kang Dynasty that's also supposed to come out.
Who cares? Honestly, is it though coming
No,
out?
but I don't think it's going to be Kang Dynasty, but I do think it'll be an Avengers film. So regardless, there's actually supposed to be a movie before Secret Wars already. And I'm just trying to keep up because they have not moved those two back yet, again, for like the 17th time. But there are a lot of movies they're saying are supposedly making it and making the cut prior to them coming out.
Well, there are a lot of movies that need to happen to make Secret Wars possible.
I agree, but it's kind of, my point just being is we're getting down on the wire a little bit. Now, who knows, because while they just announced the Fantastic Four cast, apparently we're getting that movie in a little more than a year.
Yeah.
Maybe we're really hitting the gas again. I'm not sure.
But then again, the other, thing that Bob Iger said, the whole reason we're having this episode, he said two things. He said, we're doing sequels and we're slowing it down. Yet somehow Marvel said, let me cram 15 movies in the next 2 years so you guys are ready for Secret Wars. Make that make sense. You're talking out of two sides of your mouth.
That's what I mean. So I don't know, but that is my second pick because, well, there's a lot of reasons why it's my second pick, as I explained, but I would like to see a third one, especially before we hit any of the big team-up movies.
Oh, for sure. Totally agree. Definitely aligned. My second and final pick, I also was going between two, but I'm going to go with my heart as well. And I'm going to pick a sequel to No Way Home, aka Spider-Man 4, for a multitude of reasons. The first one that comes to mind is you all know how much I loved the ending of No Way Home, setting Peter Parker back to his very stereotypical beginnings, the way that I, as a child, was introduced to Peter Parker, both in animated and Tobey Maguire form. All of those things that make me so nostalgic for the character are coming back. And that's what that set up, and I can't wait. And it's been way too long already without a confirmation. The second reason is what's happened very recently. Everything that was set up with Kingpin coming out of Echo that's going to be, further explored upon in Born Again, there's so much pointing to that also having an effect on Spider-Man 4, or at least being a plot line in Spider-Man 4, that I am now even more excited to see the character come back, face one of his most prominent villains, and one that we haven't seen yet in live action. Obviously, we saw Miles fight him in Into the Spider-Verse, so a Spider-Man has fought a Kingpin in an MCU adjacent film, but never in live action, and never yet Peter Parker, Tom's Peter Parker, because that Peter Parker obviously did too in that film. But I am so excited about the live action version of this happening, and I just can't wait. I think Tom Holland is such a great Spider-Man. I love that he is so focused on telling the right stories for the character and making sure that we're not just making films just to make films. Not that I really thought Marvel was doing that with his character, but we've just seen what Sony did. So I know that having him in the room, having Kevin in the room, helping to make these decisions can help make Sony make smart decisions, unlike what they recently just put out, so that Spider Man 4 isn't trash. And think about, too, Spider Man 3 No Way Home, it did so well. Like, considering the time that it came out, it was the first time that people were really going to the movies like nutso since the pandemic. It was breaking all kinds of records since we had come back. And I think there's just something special too about that whole time and the rebirth of going to the movies. I know it was like our fourth time back that year, but none of them felt like that. None of them had people cheering in the theaters, and I'm ready for them to try to top themselves and do it again.
I'm excited for Spider-Man 4 for all the reasons you've already said. For the fact that I think we're bringing him back to what we know him to be. We've had our complaints about his original trilogy, especially being the whole stuck under Tony Stark in his shadow kind of vibe. That's fine. They've told us it's essentially a prequel to his current story that's coming, and that's great. I think he has so much potential, and I think by almost rebooting his character, I remember way back when us having a whole episode, and I mean way back when, I remember I think we were in the same room recording kind of way back when, and we did a whole episode on who we think is going to be part of the next Avengers lineup. And at the time, we did have him on there, and not that I don't think he might have some involvement, but I think the reboot actually allows him to be in a very different group, and that's those who wander New York, like Daredevil. Even can we get a Deadpool, because those two are like besties in the comics. I think that allows him to have some more interesting interactions with other groups now that they've essentially rebooted the character away from Iron Man and therefore away from the Avengers. I'm excited. I think there are really cool directions they can take this character. As of right now, I know Sony is fighting for their life to make Spider-Man 4 a multiversal movie. And I'm like, Sony, how did Madam Web do? And that's all I have to say.
And that's all I've got to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say.
That's my mic not drop, mic topple of the evening is, how did Madam Web do, Sony? And then talk to me about making another Spider-Man multiversal movie. Thank you.
Yeah. I also think, I mean, realistically, timing-wise, this movie, there's no way it comes out before Secret Wars, though it really should.
It really should.
He should be there. He should be there with a live-action Miles. So, like, you know, he needs to be there. And there's no way he's going to be there in his current state because nobody knows who he is.
I mean, that's fine. Nobody needs to know he's Peter Parker.
No, but nobody even has...
Yeah, but they know Spider-Man. That's not what was forgotten. It was just that Peter Parker's Spider-Man was forgotten.
Right.
All those people who interacted with him still know who he is. Like, as a whole, they know he's Spider-Man. So it's not weird for him to just show up because they're like, oh yeah, we've seen that dude before. He's been here.
Yeah, but I feel like it's like he's not as close. He doesn't have the same connection level that he did before because all of those people knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Because think about MJ. MJ didn't know who Peter was. She's not going to really know who Spider-Man is. Like, that was kind of how I was reading it, was that like anybody who really knew both versions of him aren't going to really... Like, Spider-Man is almost starting over.
Yeah, but she didn't mention Spider-Man. Like, they weren't talking about Spider-Man in their interaction. So how do you know she doesn't know who Spider-Man is?
I don't know. I made a leap.
I think it was the wrong one, and I think you should stay on the ground next time. Just for your own safety.
You're so rude.
Either way, I do think they know who Spider-Man is as a whole, and I don't think that takes away from the fact he fought in Endgame and he was with them on Titan in Infinity War. I don't think any of that is forgotten by the people who were there.
Oh, I guess that's true because J. Jonah Jameson still hates him.
Yeah, like he's still Spider-Man to everybody. Like he could show up to Strange's door and Strange will know him as Spider-Man but not remember he had all those interactions with Peter Parker.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of extrapolated, like, I don't remember Peter Parker to I don't remember interacting with any version of you at all?
No, I don't think that's not what I took that as at all. Because I remember Strange being like, saying, oh, everybody will forget that Peter Parker is Spider Man. And when he's trying to do the spell, that's why Peter keeps messing it up. He's like, oh, but I don't really want to have to retell some of these people. Like, is there a way to write them out of the spell? But it's not that people are going to forget Spider Man as a whole, or like the people who knew him are forgetting Spider or knew him as Spider Man are forgetting him as Spider Man. It's just forgetting if he was ever unmasked in front of them, they're not going to remember that. That's what I took all of that as. Like, Spider-Man was not erased from everybody's minds. Just Peter Parker being Spider-Man was.
I think I need to rewatch the movie, to be honest, because it's been a long time. It's been over 2 years. And I think over the years, my understanding has like kind of evolved into probably a little bit more extreme than what it actually is.
Yeah, because I think you're a little too far on that one.
Yeah. I mean, either way, though, to some extent, like, it is kind of weird if you're an Avenger, right? You all know who everybody's alter ego is. You all know that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. You all know that Tony Stark was Iron Man. You know these things. It is kind of strange that you, haha, pun intended, that you know this hero, but you don't know who it is. That part is a little odd.
I'm going to ask a really weird question because I was going through my brain and I was like, are there characters who this is not true for? Obviously, Daredevil has not been in the MCU long enough, nor has he met a lot of people. But it did make me pose the question of, does She-Hulk know who's under the mask or did he keep it on?
Ooh.
A question I feel I now have to ask because she might know who he is now, but she might not, and he might still be a masked hero.
I don't know. I don't know how that went down for them.
Although he shows up at the end, was he unmasked? He met the family.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, then I answered my own question.
Yeah, because I forgot he showed up after the Walk of Shame.
No, I remembered at the very end there because that's when Hulk brings his strange random son that just flies in with a horrible hairline. And I don't really know. Like, I think that overshadowed the moment. But yeah, so I guess I'm trying to think. But yeah, I guess none of them are technically masked still.
Yeah. Kate's been unmasked. Kamala's been unmasked. Ronan even has been unmasked, technically.
Yeah. So I don't know. It could be. But I mean, in the comics, it's not like everybody knows Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Nobody questions that this dude just kind of shows up in spandex tights and can walk on walls and he's just like, here to help. Nobody questions that. Nobody's like, take your mask off. We need to prove that you're a good person. They're just like, cool, thanks, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you have a point. I just think I think it's just a little, that's the one part that's a little jarring because they all did know who he was. They all knew him. And in fact, the whole world knew who he was. And then to go from that to not even his closest allies know even who Peter Parker is like, I'm still trying to like wrap my head around that. And that I think is why I was like, oh, I guess they must not know who Spider-Man is. Because over time, I just kind of was like, it's got to be the whole thing.
It's definitely why we need Spider-Man 4 before we have any team-up movies.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think we need to establish some foundation for that character now that he's been, like I said, essentially rebooted. We need the foundation prior to, here's a random team-up, just like Shang-Chi. It's like we saw the start and that was good, but now we need to kind of see the current foundation and who he is now.
Yeah, it's so much has happened transformationally for the character that we need to understand what's our baseline now that we're working with before he is tossed into other personalities, other storylines, and furthering other plot lines. He needs his own to be reestablished. I totally agree.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I couldn't have said that better.
So with those two sequels / properties, we are going to call it an episode. If you enjoyed our coverage today and you have not yet done so, please make sure that you are subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the rest of our coverage for all things Marvel and MCU for the rest of however long we keep doing this, which is hopefully a very, very long time. Also, make sure that you are checking out our website because it is the central hub to all things Sisters Assembled.
You guys can also give us a follow on Twitter at SisAssembledPod and Instagram and Threads at Sisters Assembled. You can also find us on YouTube where you can find our weekly Sisters Scoops, which are our news segment that we do every week. So make sure you guys are going on there and subscribing as well. And speaking of Spider-Man, we will be doing a replay episode to continue our series that has been elongated more than I think we thought it was going to be, as things have been coming up very quickly for us. So we will be rewatching Spider-Man Homecoming for y'all next week and kind of doing a review that we never got to do. So make sure you guys are keeping up with us for that. If you guys want to go watch the movie as well to kind of remember everything, because it's been a while, go ahead and do that as well. I'm sure that's probably the most fun experience than hearing us react to it. So go watch the movie if you're so inclined to. If not, just come around and listen to the episode afterwards. And as always, keep up with the content coming at you as Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.